almost walked off with. Yep.
All right, well, I'm Nate Conable, and I'm with Atlanta Beltline Incorporated. I'm a project manager focused mostly on transportation, but also doing a lot with the master planning, and I appreciate the opportunity to give you all an update tonight. I'm going to start by talking about transit and what we're doing on that, and we'll talk about the master planning process, and then give you a little bit of an implementation update as it relates to parks and land acquisition. To talk about transit, I really just give you a highlight of the 3 points.
Really good.
She's exceedingly good.
I knew she was good all along. You guys were trying to convince me I was wrong. You can do most anything you love.
All right, am I back? Can you hear me? Am I back on microphone now? Good. So anyway, so transit. It's a song and dance, and I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing to fund transit and continue working on funding the transit.
The mic's off.
I don't think the. Hello?
You're there.
All right. So, 3 main points I want to hit about transit. One is what we're doing to work on expanding our funding opportunities, what we're doing in terms of land acquisition, and also what we're doing in terms of moving forward with the selection of an operator, getting prepared to do that, an operator for the Beltline transit system. So to start first with the update on funding, we've worked hard over the past few months in concert with the city and MARTA to work with our congressional delegation to get their support for the project and also to get them to earmark funds for continued environmental study and an engineering study of the corridor. And at this point, we're positioned to get a federal earmark of about $300,000 to support that work on top of the $1 million earmark we have already received to support that work. We have spent quite a bit of time looking into ways to expand our resource base from a funding point of view for doing land acquisition related to transit, and have been talking with local community partners, banks, and other institutions about ways that we can bring a pot of money available to allow us to acquire land as it becomes available and to be more aggressive in that way. Next slide, please. The next piece is the transit operating piece, and I know that many of you all are wondering and interested in when we will select an operator for the Beltline transit system. And so we are continuing that process by basically developing approaches and standards that we would want to consider in selecting a transit operator. That involves partially looking at how do we want to deliver the transit project. Is it a public-private partnership? Is it a public-public partnership? What are the advantages and disadvantages of those? So we've hired a consultant to help us look at those different implementation models and come up with pros and cons and how they might apply to the Beltline. We've also begun benchmarking, developing benchmarks for operators, and these relate to customer service standards, the kind of service that we would want to provide in the Beltline transit system, whether it's on-time performance of the trains or the call centers that are involved with it. And so we're coming up with the benchmarks that we would want any operator to be able to meet in order to provide a high-quality transit experience as part of the Beltline. And we're actually beginning to look at some of the potential operators out there and how they might match up to those benchmarks. And then finally, we're looking through all of this at how can we cost-effectively operate and maintain the Beltline transit system over the long term. We've also done another thing looking at expanding our funding options, and that is we created a working team with MARTA senior staff, and that working team was developed to explore a new program that the Federal Transit Administration has put together to try to get projects delivered more quickly, transit projects built more quickly by reducing the time it takes to build them, reducing some of the oversight, and also bringing private investment into transit projects. And based on the work we did in the working team, we submitted a letter of interest to FTA in the program, but we did not formally apply at this time. And finally, we are, not finally, but we are also, just to point out, we are continuing to advance implementation on all segments of the Beltline. One of the biggest ways that this is happening is that MARTA has chosen a locally preferred alternative. When MARTA did a study of the Beltline transit loop, they looked at the Beltline transit loop and they decided that a rail-based technology and that building the entire Lindbergh to Lindbergh loop, or the series of segments that make up that loop, is the right way to build the Beltline transit. And we are continuing to work towards that goal. And as a way to continue to advance the development of the project in line with this selection, we've allocated $7.75 million in this year's Atlanta Beltline Inc. budget to do environmental and engineering studies of the entire corridor, and to do detailed engineering studies of the northwest segment to figure out what the trail and transit alignment should be. Right-of-way acquisition. As you all probably know by now, we have entered into a partnership, a public-private partnership, to gain an interest in the land formerly owned by, or still currently owned by Keith and Wayne Mason. And that will give us both an interest and control in the routing of the transit and trail, and also in the type of development that goes into that corridor, the transit-oriented development that will go there to support the facility. On the southwest, southeast, and northwest, we are continuing our active negotiations with the Georgia Department of Transportation and private railroad companies to begin potentially acquiring additional segments of the Beltline route. Now going to change, oh yeah, good. One more. I want to change topic slightly here. It's a related topic, but another major effort that we're currently undergoing is a master planning process for the entire Beltline. And for those of you all who haven't heard about it, there have been previous plans done around the Beltline area, previous master plans, the most significant being the Beltline redevelopment plan that was developed in 2005. And it basically gives an overall framework for implementing the Beltline between transportation projects, the land use, the economic development nodes, and trail and transit connectivity. We now have gone into a process where we've broken the Beltline down into 10 areas for more detailed study and more comprehensive community engagement to come up with detailed plans that we can use to implement the Beltline, looking at transportation issues, how do we connect people to and from the Beltline and allow them to circulate within the development nodes, and what infrastructure is needed, pedestrian infrastructure, bicycle infrastructure, additional transit infrastructure. Also confirming the land use plan. There's the redevelopment plan. There are also other small area neighborhood-based plans that have been done, and we need to confirm what this transit-oriented development is going to look like in each area of the Beltline. And then finally, doing parks master planning. And the parks master planning is being driven by the fact that the Parks Department, through their Green Space Opportunity Bond, is moving forward on 5 parks to be acquired and developed by 2010. And so we're doing master planning for those park sites integrated into the rest of this master planning.